From the Ringer Podcast Network, this is Dissect, long-form musical analysis broken into short, digestible episodes. This is episode 15 of our season-long analysis of Kendrick Lamar's Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. I'm your host, Cole Kushnab. Last time on Dissect, we examined Mr. Morale's 14th track, Auntie Diaries. It was there we heard Kendrick's journey of unlearning the homophobic and transphobic teachings he absorbed as a child. While Kendrick's heart always accepted his trans uncle and cousin, Marianne exposed Kendrick's hypocrisy using homophobic slurs when he himself requested white people not use the N-word, even when rapping to his songs. Despite the moral lesson of the song being rooted in empathy and acceptance, Kendrick used the very same slur he learned not to use throughout Auntie Diaries, leaving the song morally ambiguous, a decision he knew would ignite some backlash. And we hear a depiction of this backlash as the album continues into its next track, the subject of our episode today, Mr. Morale.
It was one of the worst performances I've seen in my life. I couldn't sleep last night because I felt this shit.
Produced by Pharrell, Mr. Morale begins with an ominous probing synthesizer scoring a sample of a YouTuber named Shango, whose channel is focused around the Dallas Cowboys. The video that's sampled is an impassioned rant about the Cowboys losing by 20 points the day before.
It was one of the worst performances I've seen in my life. I couldn't sleep last night because I felt this shit coming because we were walking around like, we're the shit. We beat the damn world champs. We're good. Oh, cocky!
Devoid of its original context and appearing directly after Auntie Diaries, it seems Shango's outrage is used to vocalize a specific type of reaction Kendrick knew was coming, performative outrage. The same brand of performative outrage Kendrick has been critiquing throughout Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. It's the way some people express their critiques with judgment and condemnation, using the mistakes or flaws as others to fuel their ego's need to feel superior. This kind of moral grandstanding is less about solving problems and more about elevating the critic in the eyes of others. Mr. Morale continues with a dark E minor arpeggio accompanied by women's voices. Interestingly, these voices are pulled from a stock sound library that comes with Apple's Logic Pro X music software. Over this ominous musical texture, we hear Kendrick making various grunting noises that grow more intense until the instrumental cuts out and Kendrick yells, "Yeah," 4 times. This is a clever Easter egg as it slyly nods to Pharrell Williams' producer tag. In the majority of Pharrell-produced songs, the track begins with his signature 4 count, where the first beat of the loop is repeated 4 times.
My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard and
Mr. Morale doesn't contain Pharrell's standard 4-count start, likely for creative reasons, as I don't see it working well with Kendrick's approach to this particular beat. However, Kendrick's 4 yeahs are almost certainly a replacement for it, a little wink to us listeners in the know. However, the grunting noises crescendoing into these defined yeahs also serve a thematic and narrative purpose, as it sounds as if Kendrick is emerging out of a bad dream. However, considering where we are and where we're going in the album's narrative, as well as the song title being Mr. Morale, all signs point to this depicting a spiritual awakening in which Kendrick's higher self is beginning to emerge. The song Mr. Morale is track 7 on disc 2, and when looking at the mirrored version of the track listing, the song Worldwide Steppers is its paired reflection, its mirrored companion song. Recall that Worldwide Steppers described human beings as unconscious zombies trying to scratch the itch of their ego and pain bodies.
I'm a killer, he's a killer, she's a killer, bitch. We some killers walking zombies trying to scratch that itch. Germophobic, hetero and homophobic, photoshopping lies and motives, hide your eyes then pose for the pic.
As we've talked about throughout the season, the concept of human unconsciousness comes from Eckhart Tolle, who defines it as an absence of inner awareness, when we are completely controlled by our thoughts, emotions, and ego. Most of this egoic identity is formed by our environment and cultural conditioning, especially as a child, which unconsciously programs how we think, feel, and behave as an adult. When we're unconscious, we react to life based on these mental patterns heavily influenced by emotional pain, trauma, and fear, often without realizing it. We live like sleepwalkers, like walking zombies, trapped in compulsive thinking and habitual behavior, constantly recreating the same problems, conflicts, and suffering. Tolle posits that all human suffering and violence, whether in relationships, institutions, or entire nations, all arise from this unconscious state.
Largely, most of humanity has been trapped in the egoic consciousness for thousands of years. And it has produced what we now know as human history. So much suffering created not by natural disasters, but by humans, creating so much suffering for other humans. And so many people, millions upon millions killed, not only in warfare between nations, but killed by their own governments. All these atrocities, these millions upon millions of people killed, they were not killed by psychopaths, but the number of people killed by criminals and psychopaths is very, very small compared to the number of humans killed by normal humans. Normal. And this is why we are now again at a situation where you can see the same unconsciousness arising again in the collective, going in the same direction as before.
Tolle's concept of unconsciousness is the fundamental characteristic of Kendrick's worldwide steppers. It represents the majority of human beings living through their ego, perpetuating generational cycles of trauma and suffering. And so if the big steppers in part symbolizes unconscious living, then what about Mr. Morale? Well, in my interpretation, it reflects the other half of Tolle's teachings, living consciously. It's about accessing a deeper, more transcendent part of the self, one that breaks free from the grip of the ego. This is the awakening from unconsciousness, learning to observe your thoughts and emotions without letting them control your behavior or create suffering for yourself and those around you. In Tolle's teachings, this is achieved by anchoring yourself in present moment awareness, not reliving or regretting the past, not the anxiety of your future. Both past and future are mental constructs. They only exist in your mind. We experience life exclusively in the present moment, and Tolle teaches that living in the present moment as much as possible is the key to inner freedom, peace, and awakening. Tolle believes that pure consciousness or presence, the still, alert awareness above all thoughts and emotions, is your natural state, your true divine spiritual essence. When you live consciously, you are no longer run by compulsive thinking or reactive emotions. Instead, you observe them without attachment, creating space between you and the ego. In that space, you're able to observe your behavior patterns with distance and without judgment, allowing you to address them with clarity and compassion. Over time, this awareness dissolves unconscious patterns and breaks the cycle of ego-driven suffering. In living consciously, you are no longer seeking fulfillment. You realize it here and now as the still, unshakable essence of who you are.
Everybody, every human being and life form is an expression of that one formless and timeless one life. And that is beyond anything that could be destroyed. It's life itself. It has no opposite. The one life has no, death is not the opposite of life. Death is the opposite of birth. And birth and death apply to the forms that appear on the surface of the sphere. The life that you are and the life that I am can never be destroyed. The essence of every life form is eternal. It derives from the one. It's an expression of the one. When you know that within yourself, you look with deep compassion upon the madness that happens on the surface reality, perpetrated by humans who don't know who they are. And because they don't know who they are, they don't know what they are doing to themselves, ultimately, because every other is yourself.
Over the course of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, we've experienced Kendrick grow more aware of his actions and behavior patterns. Through practices like therapy, meditation, and solitude in nature, Kendrick has been able to resist giving into his ego's every impulse and observe his vices with some distance, allowing him to better understand why they arise. Through this increased awareness and clarity, he's been getting closer to breaking the cycle of generational trauma that he inherited and that he risks passing down to his children. In Kendrick's joint interview with Baby Keem for ID magazine, there's a moment in which the two of them discuss learning to detach from their emotions. Baby Keem says to Kendrick, quote, "I feel my thing now is to detach myself from the wrong things and attach myself to the right things, things that I should feel. Like sometimes I'll detach myself from a lot of things that just upset me because I feel like I don't need to deal with it," unquote. Kendrick then offers Keem some advice, responding, quote, "It's about being aware. The ego works how it wants to work. You gotta let that motherfucker be its own person. That's the ego. You have to be aware of it and know how to utilize it in a positive way," unquote. This quote exemplifies Kendrick's understanding of Tolle's teachings. Through awareness, the ego is treated like its own entity. Rather than being completely unaware of it and thus entirely controlled by it unconsciously, the space and detachment awareness creates allows one to take control. And this fundamental aspect of Tolle's teachings is what I believe to be a primary layer in the Mr. Morale moniker. It represents this deeper dimension of pure consciousness and awareness, this higher self that allows us to break free from the ego and all of its judgment, trauma, and pain, ending cycles of suffering. Just as Kodak Black was used as a symbol of unconsciousness, Eckhart Tolle is a symbol of consciousness, someone who has mastered living through this deeper dimension. Thus, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is the spectrum that exists within all human beings. Someone like Kodak Black is closer to the Big Stepper, someone whose unconscious behavior is largely controlled by their ego and their environmental conditioning. But Mr. Morale exists within Kodak Black too, just as the Big Stepper exists within Eckhart Tolle, who grew up with an abusive father and was on the brink of suicide before his spiritual awakening. And then there's Kendrick Lamar, OK Llama. He's somewhere in the middle of the spectrum, someone raised to be a big stepper who's on a spiritual journey toward Mr. Morale. And in my interpretation, this is what we hear at the start of the song Mr. Morale. It's Kendrick awakening, symbolizing his transition from unconsciousness to consciousness, emerging from the grip of his ego and pain body that's created the nightmare of his mind.
Enoch, your father just detox. My calling is right on time. Transformation, I must have 1,000 lives and like 3,000 wives. You should know that I'm slightly off, fighting off demons that been outside. Better known as myself, I'm a demigod. Every thought is creative. Sometimes I'm afraid of my open mind.
Supporting our theory that Mr. Morale depicts awakening, each of the song's 2 verses are addressed to one of his children, and both cite an awakening or transformation. Here at the start of verse 1, Kendrick raps, "Enoch, your father's just detoxed. My calling is right on time. Transformation." Enoch is the name of Kendrick's son, who is seen being held by Whitney on Mr. Morale's album cover. In the Bible, Enoch is a 5th-generation descendant of Adam who is described in Genesis 5:24. Quote, "Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more, because God took him," unquote. Most interpret this as meaning Enoch did not die a natural death because he pleased God. As one of only 2 people in the Bible said to be taken by God without dying, Enoch symbolizes spiritual transcendence and divine transformation. Naming his son Enoch may reflect Kendrick's desire for his son to inherit a legacy of spiritual insight, or to symbolize a generational shift toward purity and enlightenment. This may be one reason Kendrick says transformation in this passage, as Enoch will become the first generation in his family lineage that will hopefully live without the burden of the generational trauma Kendrick inherited. However, transformation also refers to Kendrick's own transformation occurring on the album. Kendrick tells his son he just detoxed and is answering his true calling in the nick of time. In other words, he's killing his demons, detoxing from his sex addiction, and transforming into a higher self for Enoch's sake. This opening lyrical passage is also one of the first of many direct reflection points we're going to observe between Mr. Morale and his mirrored companion, Worldwide Steppers. Recall that on Worldwide Steppers, Kendrick mentioned both of his children, including Enoch by name.
Playing baby shark with my daughter, watching for sharks outside at the same time. Life as a protective father, I kill for my son Enoch is the part 2. When I inspire my children to make higher valleys, in this present moment I saw that through. Ask Whitney about my...
Kendrick also mentions detoxing on Worldwide Steppers, just as he did in this opening line of Mr. Morale.
Yesterday I prayed to the flowers and trees, gratification to the powers that be, synchronization with my energy chakras, the ghost of Dr. Sebi, paid it forward, cleaned out my toxins, bacteria heavy.
Just before this passage on worldwide steppers, Kendrick mentions doing past life regression therapy, which claims to access memories of past lives in order to gain insight or healing in this life.
Teleport out my home body for comfort. I don't pass judgment, past life regressions keep me in question. Where did I come from? I don't think like
This mention of past lives is another reflection point, as Kendrick continues Mr. Morale's verse saying, I must have had 1,000 lives and like 3,000 wives. On one hand, Kendrick seems to be alluding to the fact that in early eras of human history, it was very common for men to be married to multiple women simultaneously. He seems to be relating this to his current life's sex addiction and infidelity. As we talked about on earlier episodes, Kendrick seems to believe in reincarnation, as it's mentioned in multiple songs since Mr. Morale's release. The end of reincarnation is the soul's liberation from the cycle of birth and death, and is achieved through spiritual realization, detachment, and inner transformation. It is the freedom from desire, ego, and suffering, leading to union with the divine beyond physical existence. The implication of Kendrick's many mentions of reincarnation may be that his current spiritual journey is an attempt to break the cycle of life and death and attain nirvana, freeing himself not only in this life, but from all future existence. Still addressing Enoch, Kendrick continues, You should know that I'm slightly off fighting off demons that's been outside. Better known as myself, I'm a demigod. It's yet another direct reflection point with worldwide steppers, where Kendrick also referred to himself as a god in the same passage that he describes threats coming from outside.
my genetic build can build multi-universes. The man of God playing baby shark with my daughter, watching for sharks outside at the same time. Life as a protective father, I kill for my son Enoch.
In both passages, outside is described as a setting that threatens the inside of their home, i.e. threatens the health of his family. This not only includes broader environmental threats like those Kendrick experienced in Compton, but also the threats of Kendrick's demons that he's been fighting off all album long. We see this depicted directly on the Mr. Morale album cover, where Kendrick, Whitney, and their children are inside of a safe house. The walls are torn and damaged, symbolizing a history of generational trauma, and perhaps the direct result of the couple's many fights or pain body feedings like we heard on We Cry Together. Still, the family is intact, healing together, with the children representing the purity and hope of a better future. Kendrick holds his daughter while gazing outside the window, on the lookout for demons, for sharks, for threats. He wears a crown of thorns, but also carries a gun tucked into his waistband. That dichotomy, the crown and the gun, is the same dichotomy between Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers we just discussed, with Kendrick embodying both the sinner and the saint. Thus he continues the verse calling himself a demigod, which is the offspring of a god and a human. In myth, demigods are powerful but not perfect, simultaneously divine and flawed. In other words, they are both Mr. Morale and the Big Stepper. Thus, we see the connection between Enoch, a symbol of spiritual elevation, opening the verse, and Kendrick's own identity as a demigod here at the end of the verse. Kendrick is the in-between, OK Lama, a powerful but flawed figure in the process of spiritual detox, clearing the path for a freer, higher generation embodied by his son.
Shit on my mind and it's heavy. Tear you in pieces cause it's way too heavy. My diamonds, the joker is heavy. More life to give on demand, are you ready? Who keep them honest like us? Who in alignment like us? Who gotta heal them or us? Us! When there's no one to call.
Kendrick begins the chorus, shit on my mind and it's heavy. Tell you in pieces cause it's way too heavy. This seems to describe the album itself, which has unloaded Kendrick's heaviest thoughts and emotion in pieces across different songs, as if each track is a therapy session focused on a different stage in his healing journey. As we'll see, this also begins to set up the next song, Mother I Sober, the watershed moment of the album that will be told in narrative fragments, as if Kendrick is looking into a broken mirror. He continues, my diamonds, the choker is heavy. More life to give, on demand, are you ready? As throughout the album, Kendrick uses his jewelry as a symbol of materialism, a vice he relied on to cope with his trauma. That's why it's heavy. Wealth came at a cost. Part of that weight is the crushing expectation of being seen as a savior, the pure embodiment of Mr. Morale. This tension is reflected visually in the diamond-encrusted crown of thorns he wears on the album cover. The crown evokes the role of the savior, while the diamonds signify the very vices he turned to trying to escape that role. Like invoking Jesus while carrying a gun, a crown of thorns made of diamonds is meant to contradict. If you're judging Kendrick Lamar, you might call him a hypocrite. But if you're empathizing with him, you'll recognize this is the duality of being human, both flawed and divine at once. The following line, "More life to give, on demand, are you ready?" continues to reference the album itself. Kendrick's life, his truth, his trauma, all played on demand. However, "Are you ready?" is more preparation for the brutal honesty of Mother I Sober. He's asking whether we're truly prepared to witness his reckoning with generational trauma and abuse. Are we ready to face what more actually means? He then continues rapping, "Who keep 'em honest like us? Who in alignment like us? Who gotta heal 'em all? Us. When there's no one to call, us." The us here seems like the Black community. He's rounding the troops as he prepares to go to war with his trauma on Mother I Sober, which Kendrick will make clear is part of a shared trauma among Black Americans. In my interpretation of this passage, Kendrick is saying, fair or not, their oppressors cannot be relied on for their liberation. They have to heal themselves. There's no one to call on besides each other. Singer Sam Dew enters the track to deliver the first half of the post-chorus, singing, "Don't need no conversation. If it ain't about the business, shut the door now. Bitch, it's a celebration. And if this shit ain't bussin', what's it for now?" It's a contrast in tone similar to Dew's role on the previous track, Savior. In between Kendrick calling out phony protesters and moral actors, Dew saying, "You really want to know how I get so low? Only one way to go, higher." It was a glimmer of hope in an otherwise cynical song. Now here on Mr. Morale, Dew describes a celebration, asking if this isn't bussin' or exceptionally good, what's it for? He's pointing to the fact that the difficult self-work of healing ultimately leads to a better place not only for you, but everyone around you. Former PG Lang artist Tana Leone joins the track to continue this analogy, singing, "Stepping out when the weight lifts," then repeats, "Floating on 'em." Stepping out is slang for putting on your best clothes and going out, presumably for the celebration Sam Dew just sang about. This is done when the weight lifts, a callback to Kendrick's chorus about the heavy things on his mind. Floating on him extends the levity metaphor and feels like a play on stunting on him. But rather than flaunting clothes or jewelry, the depiction here is spiritual awakening. It is stepping out liberated from the heavy burden of your past. It's the weightlessness of inner peace, the freedom of your new liberated self. Importantly, Leone uses the word steppin', which we know has been a central metaphor throughout the album. But now, rather than sidestepping or tap dancing around one's trauma, steppin' is used positively as a celebratory depiction of the awakened self.
Uzi, your father's in deep meditation. My spirit's awakened, my brain is asleep. I got a new temperature, sharpening multiple swords in the faith I believe. I think about Robert Kelly. If he were molested, I wonder if life for Felly. I wonder if Oprah from Closure, the way that she posted the hurt that a woman carries. My mother.
Like verse 1, Kendrick begins verse 2 stating his child's name, this time his daughter Uzi. Like Enoch, Uzi is a character in the Bible, appearing in the first book of Chronicles. The name is Hebrew for my strength or the Lord is my strength, and is a symbol of spiritual resilience. To Uzi, Kendrick says, "Your father's in deep meditation. My spirit's awakened, my brain is asleep." This image very much captures the teachings of Eckhart Tolle we discussed earlier. Kendrick has risen above his ego, his thinking mind, and has accessed the deeper transcendent dimension of inner awareness, connecting him to the timeless, formless essence of pure consciousness. He then continues, "I got a new temperature, sharpening multiple swords in the faith I believe." This continues Kendrick's transformation. He has entered a new awakened state of mind and is preparing himself to confront the battles ahead, i.e. Mother I Sober. Having multiple swords in the faith I believe implies an evolving belief system, one that incorporates elements of Christianity, but also now Eastern concepts like reincarnation and Eckhart Tolle's teachings about the ego, the pain body, collective human consciousness, and present moment awareness. Putting his new faith into practice, Kendrick raps, "I think about Robert Kelly. If he weren't molested, I wonder if life would fail him." R. Kelly's fall from grace has been well documented. In 2021 and 22, he was convicted for racketeering, sex trafficking, and child pornography. Convictions that confirmed long-standing allegations that he systematically groomed, manipulated, and abused underage girls and women for decades. Kendrick's new temperature or spiritual awakening finds him wondering how Kelly's own traumatic childhood influenced him to become an abuser himself. Robert Kelly grew up fatherless, raised by a single mother in public housing in Chicago's South Side. He was molested repeatedly from age 7 to around 15, reportedly by a female relative and by a male family friend or landlord. He frequently witnessed violence in his neighborhood, and at age 11, he was shot by an older boy while riding his bike. Kelly also suffered from dyslexia, eventually dropping out of high school because he struggled to read and was ridiculed and bullied for his learning challenges. Kelly described his teenage girlfriend, Lulu, as being the first person who understood him, giving him hope amidst a tumultuous upbringing. However, Lulu drowned in a river while trying to escape a group of boys who are allegedly attempting to assault her. Kelly said he was present during the incident but was too frightened to help. Quote, "I felt like a coward. I should have done something, but I just stood there, frozen," unquote. Kelly says the experience left him ashamed and overwhelmed with guilt. Kendrick's willingness to empathize with Kelly's early circumstances shows he's no longer interested in simple moral binaries. I don't think he's excusing R. Kelly's actions, but he is genuinely trying to understand their origins, to trace the wound of generational trauma back to its source. Eckhart Tolle teaches that every act of abuse leaves more than one victim. There's the direct victim, whose pain is immediate and visible, but often overlooked is the perpetrator's own history of suffering. As we talked about earlier, Tolle believes unconscious destructive behavior arises from unhealed pain, often experienced in childhood. In this view, the abuser isn't simply a monster, but a vessel for inherited trauma. Like Kodak Black, R. Kelly is someone shaped by unconscious living, driven by a heavy pain body and environmental conditioning. Thus, the abused became the abuser, adding a spoke in the wheel of generational trauma. To break the wheel, we have to understand where it starts. And for Tolle, awareness is the only way to do this. Not outrage or exile, but compassionate, conscious seeing of both victims. This compassionate view extends into Kendrick's next line. I wonder if Oprah found closure, the way that she postered the hurt that a woman carries. Throughout her career, Oprah has been very open about the abuse she suffered as a child. She spent her early years in rural Mississippi with her grandmother, who whipped her constantly for even the smallest mistakes. At age 6, she moved to Milwaukee to live with her mother, where she was left largely unsupervised. Starting at the age of 9, she was sexually abused by several men, including her cousin, a family friend, and her uncle. At 14, she became pregnant as a result of sexual assault. However, the baby was born prematurely and died shortly after birth. That same year, she was sent to live with her father in Nashville, who she credits for turning her life around. When Oprah eventually defied the odds and created the most successful daytime talk show in history, she used her platform and story to help break the silence around abuse. She also introduced millions to books and teachers focused on healing, including one Eckhart Tolle. Oprah was the biggest public advocate for Tolle's first book, 1999's The Power of Now, playing a significant role in it becoming a bestseller. When Tolle released A New Earth in 2008, Oprah partnered with Tolle on a 10-week live online course. Each week, Tolle and Oprah discussed a chapter of the book in front of hundreds of thousands of live viewers, bringing his concepts of the ego, the pain body, and present moment awareness to a mainstream audience. Without Oprah's support, it's very possible that Kendrick Lamar would never have discovered Tolle's work, which we know has been critical to Kendrick's own healing journey. Now, citing both R. Kelly and Oprah by name adds to the collection of reflection points we've been documenting throughout Mr. Morale. Oprah was first mentioned back on the outro of N95, when Kendrick sarcastically compared himself to her.
What the fuck is council culture, dog? Say what I want about you niggas. I'm like Oprah, dog. I treat you crackers like...
R. Kelly was referenced by name on We Cry Together, where Kendrick attempts to expose his partner's hypocrisy in claiming to be a feminist while still listening to Kelly's music.
You the reason R. Kelly can't recognize that he's abusive.
Shut the fuck up. We all know you still playing this music. Said I'm tired of these.
In both examples, Oprah and R. Kelly became weaponized to help Kendrick assert his ego. Exemplifying his spiritual growth, Kendrick now cites both with compassion, trying to understand how their childhood trauma shaped their behavior as adults. Like Kodak Black and Baby Keem, R. Kelly and Oprah symbolize two potential paths, one that perpetuated a cycle of trauma and one that ended it.
My mother abused young, like all other mothers back where we from. SSI bury family members. At the repast, they serving Popeye's chicken. What you know about black trauma? Heffing is kicking back, it's another genre. Tyler Perry, the face of 1,000 rappers using violence to cover what really happened. I know somebody...
Kendrick connects Oprah's abuse as a child with his mom's, rapping, "My mother abused young," like all of the mothers back where we're from. Back Where We're From is another nod to Chicago, where Kendrick's mother and father lived before moving to Compton in the early 90s. It was also where R. Kelly grew up and where Oprah established herself as a media superstar. This line is more set up for the forthcoming Mother I Sober, where Kendrick will not only describe some of her abuse in detail, but also articulate the ways her trauma was passed down to him. Kendrick saying, like all of our mothers, points to the fact that Black girls are more likely to experience sexual abuse at an early age than any other racial group. A 2014 study found that an alarming 60% of Black girls report being sexually assaulted before the age of 18. The verse continues, SSI bury family members at the repast they serve in Popeye's chicken. SSI, or Supplemental Security Income, is a federal program for low-income individuals. Kendrick is pointing out the twisted irony of funerals being paid for with government assistance, coupling poverty and grief as a tragic reality for many families in his community. Serving the fast food chain Popeyes at the repast continues the analogy. Fried chicken is comfort food, but it's also cheap, possibly chosen out of necessity rather than choice. The reference is also yet another reflection point with Worldwide Steppers, where Kendrick lamented about serving unhealthy food at a charity toy drive.
My last Christmas toy drive in Compton handed out eulogies, not because the rags in the park had red gradient, but because the high blood pressure flooded the catering. So what's the difference?
This line from Worldwide Steppers adds depth to the image of Popeyes at the repast, revealing a poverty-driven feedback loop where death is both mourned and perpetuated, as Black Americans suffer disproportionately from heart disease, hypertension, and diabetes, conditions closely tied to diet. Kendrick referencing R. Kelly, Oprah, his mother, and funerals culminates into the line, what you know about Black trauma. The implication seems to be that those of us with no experience with it know nothing about it. We'll never truly know what it's like to endure the level of trauma they have collectively as a community. Like many things in this song, Kendrick will expand on this point in Mother I Sober, where he demands that those of us on the outside refrain from judging his community without considering their shared history of trauma. Kendrick then continues by citing another Black American who suffered abuse, rapping, Tyler Perry, the face of 1,000 rappers using violence to cover what really happened. Tyler Perry has been open about the abuse he suffered as a child, which included being frequently whipped and beaten by his father. In 2010, he appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show, where he revealed that he was sexually abused between the ages of 10 and 12 by 4 different adults. Like Oprah and R. Kelly, Perry said the abuse led to feelings of isolation, confusion, and deep shame. Creative writing became his outlet, and he eventually found historic success in the film industry. While Perry credits writing, healing, spirituality, and faith as central to his healing journey, Kendrick couples Perry with 1,000 rappers who use violence to cover what really happened. It's another topic he'll expand on in Mother I Sober, but here Kendrick points to the reality that victims of trauma often struggle expressing their emotions and talking about the abuse they suffered. Instead of crying or asking for help, some boys learn to externalize their pain through anger or violence, behavior that's rewarded in a society indoctrinated in stoic masculinity. The National Child Traumatic Stress Network reported that trauma-affected boys, especially those in underserved communities, are often misdiagnosed as defiant or violent when really they're reacting to chronic fear, grief, and unresolved pain. Just as Kendrick challenges us to see R. Kelly through the lens of his own childhood abuse, he's also asking us to shift how we hear violence in hip-hop, not as glorification, but as an expression of trauma from boys wearing the mask of masculinity to cover what really happened.
I know somebody's listening. Past life regressions to know my conditions is based off experience. Karma for karma, my habits insensitive. Watching my cousin struggle with addiction, then watching her firstborn make $1 million, and both of them off the grid for forgiveness. I'm sacrificing myself to start the healing and shit on my mind.
Kendrick continues the verse rapping, I know somebody's listening. Past life regression to know my conditions. It's based off experience. Karma for karma, my habits insensitive. As we've heard throughout the album, Kendrick is considering the complexities of human behavior, attempting to get to the root of why we do the things we do, which can sometimes feel beyond our control. Like on Worldwide Steppers, Kendrick mentions past life regression therapy by name, implying that the conditions of his life are not only influenced by his childhood, but also determined by the choices made in his previous lives, hence karma for karma. It's a thread he'll pick back up on Mother I Sober, where he'll express how individual choices not only affect our own life, but the lives of those around us, especially our family. Kendrick then raps, watching my cousin struggle with addiction, then watching her firstborn make $1 million. This almost certainly references Baby Keem, who described his mother being strung out on Savior Interlude. This provides clarity around Kendrick and Keem's family ties. If Keem is Kendrick's cousin's son, that makes Keem and Kendrick first cousins once removed. This is somewhat critical information to know heading into Mother I Sober, where Kendrick will continue connecting dots between family members while revealing the trauma he suffered as a child. Referring to Keem and Keem's mother, he continues, and both of them off the grid for forgiveness. This implies that the two have been taking time to heal in isolation, and it's likely we'll hear more about Keem's life story and healing journey on his forthcoming album, Child with Wolves. The phrasing off the grid not only describes isolation, but it's also a nod to Kanye West's 2021 song of the same name. Baby Keem had a verse on the song that didn't make the final release, and the song's chorus is about going off the grid or isolating yourself in order to heal for the betterment of your children.
We off the grid, this for my kid. But when my kids have kids, everything we did for the crib, everything we did.
Kendrick ends the second verse, I'm sacrificing myself to start the healing. Not counting his repetition of the chorus, this is Kendrick's final line of the song and is a direct acknowledgement of what's coming next in Mother I Sober. The sacrifice is Kendrick laying himself bare for the entire world to see, detailing the trauma of his childhood with a level of transparency hip-hop has never seen. The hope is his sacrifice of radical vulnerability will connect with and inspire others in his community to undergo their own healing journeys. The preparation for this moment and its potential for healing is continued in the song's outro, where Tana Leon returns to gather the troops.
I say, hydrate, it's time to heal. Say, you're frustrated, I can feel. Huddle up, tie the flag, call the troops, holler back. Huddle up, tie the flag, call the troops, holler back.
Leon begins singing, Hydrate, it's time to heal. You're frustrated, I can feel. The call for hydration continues Kendrick's long use of water as a symbol of spiritual cleansing, renewal, and healing. It's something we detailed in our episode on N95 apropos of the lines, serving up a look, dancing in a drought. Hello to the big stepper, never losing count. This excerpt described the big stepper's intuition to flaunt material wealth and project a flawless persona when really they're hurting inside. It's an act. It's theater. A mask to cover up what really happened. The big steppers are in a spiritual drought. They need to hydrate. They need to heal. Leon then sings, huddle up, tie the flag, call the troops, holler back. It's a call to arms for communal healing, framing generational trauma as an inherited battlefield where silence, shame, and division have perpetuated suffering for centuries. Kendrick's war trades violence for compassion, bravado for vulnerability, and physical strength for emotional courage. Indeed, throughout the title track, Mr. Morale, we've witnessed Kendrick begin to embody the conscious awareness that Eckhart Tolle teaches, a spiritual awakening out of the nightmare of unconscious reactivity driven by trauma, a transformation that allows him to detach from his ego and lead an army toward communal healing. Having gathered the troops, Kendrick offers himself as the first sacrifice, stepping forward into the silence and standing before the mirror, ready to finally face the wounded reflection he spent a lifetime avoiding.
I'm sensitive, I feel everything, I feel everybody. One man, standing on two words, heal everybody. Transformation, then reciprocation, karma must return, heal myself.
Of course, this is the point of no return in Kendrick's healing journey, the gutting, soul-bearing masterpiece, Mother I Sober, a song we'll examine note by note, line by line, next time on Dissect. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a comment, share with a friend, or post about Dissect on social media. It all really helps. You can also support the show by purchasing limited Season 13 merchandise at dissectpodcast.com. All right, thanks everyone. Talk to you next week.